Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of Hit the Pacecar here on YouTube. We would greatly appreciate a like, follow, comment, subscribe, share, do whatever you need to do. And of course, it's post Hotlanta week, post Echo Park Speedway, and we're also looking ahead to North Wilkesboro this weekend for the Cup Series and the trucks, which we'll talk about all that in a little bit. But of course, I have to introduce our other members of the show, my co-hosts, the Pacecar boys of Cory and Tyler. Cory, how are we doing today?
I'm doing good, man. Life is good. I was gonna have a joke and be like, after that Saturday race, I just wanted to say, everything's great. Everything's great.
Yeah,
And just
that
do that all as my intro today. But, Sunday made me feel better about this weekend.
yeah, Saturday was just. I mean, there was some good racing in there for sure, but there was just too many wrecks. It was such a long race with all the cleanups they needed to do. Wasn't the most fond of that Saturday race, but honestly, I adored the Sunday race. I felt like it had a little bit of everything. And we'll talk about the Sunday race and the Saturday race here in a second. But Tyler, how are we doing here today?
Man, we're doing great. Justin brought home the win on my birthday. You can't beat that.
Yeah, some of you that you should know at this point that that this guy here is a Justin Allgaier super fan. So yeah, we weren't me and Cory. I think we both put into the chat. We weren't necessarily happy with the way it finished, and we weren't happy that Allgaier won. But I think we both said congrats or like happy for you because that's good for you. But me and Cory are like fuck that. Like I'm over. In our heads, we're like fuck that.
He's too dominant right now. And you and me
Greatest season
both
ever.
love you and me both love Algar, but he's
Yeah, we
just
love Allgaier.
too dominant this year.
Not a thing. Never can be too dominant.
There's only one guy that I've ever been fond of, just winning and winning and winning and winning, and his name is Rowdy Bush. It's the only guy that I've ever been down for when it comes to that. I don't know. I just don't like seeing the same guy win, especially a track like Atlanta where it really is anybody's race. You know, I was thinking maybe Retzloff might end up winning the end of that thing, Cory. Like I was beginning to think that Retzloff had a good shot at the end of that race.
Oh, dude, I was listening to his radio in the final laps, and I was like, because my TV's behind, and I'm sitting there
Mm.
like, oh my god, oh my god, and that look, and I'm like, dang, he really wasn't even close. I mean, he was close, but he never really got side by side, And I was like, dang, that would have been awesome.
Yeah, I thought he had a good shot at the end. Right, before we get started talking about the O'Reilly Series and the Cup Series this past weekend at Echo Park Speedway, let's go through a little bit of a points update post Echo Park and, of course, the top 10 results from this past weekend. We had Cup, we had O'Reilly, and we had the Truck Series. Let's start with the top 10 results from the weekend in the Craftsman Truck Series at Lime Rock Park. We had Grant Enfinger return to victory lane. In second place, we had young Landon Lewis just short of his first career win in a NASCAR Touring Series. In third, we had Caden Honeycutt, who I thought had a good shot to win this race, got spun out and came back. And then co-owner, I should say, of the racetrack, Parker Clearman, with the top 5 finish in fourth, and then Christian Eckes rounding out the top 5. In sixth, we had Daniel Hemrick, a great run in seventh from Andres Perez. In eighth, we had Tanner Gray, ninth, Stuart Friesen, and then Colin Braun rounds out your top 10. Another good run from him in that 25 for Colleague. And then we look at the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, Justin Allgaier with his 6th victory on the season. In second, we had Carson Quaffle. I don't know how he hasn't gotten his first win already. And then Parker Retzloff with another good run in third. William Sawalich in fourth. And then Anthony Alfredo with another top 5. He's been looking really good over the last month in fifth. In sixth, we had Garrett Smithley. Great run from him in the 0. Brandon Jones in seventh. Kyle Sieg in eighth. Raja Caruth in ninth, and then rounding out your top 10, you had Jeremy Clements. And then we look at the NASCAR Cup Series, a dominant win by Ryan Blaney. Christopher Bell in second. Looked like Carson Osavar had a shot to get career win number 2, but he gets third. In fourth, we have Ty Gibbs. Eric Jones rounding out the top 5. A great run from Shane Van Gisbergen in sixth. In seventh, we have Austin Dillon. Eighth, Tyler Reddick. Ninth, Joey Logano. And then Christopher Buescher rounding out your top 10. And now let's look at the points update post Echo Park Speedway and Lime Rock Park. Looking at the Truck Series, Lane Riggs, 595 points, 44 points above second place. Caden Honeycutt. And then third in the standings, you have Chandler Smith, who's 154 back of his teammate. And then we go back to the bubble battle. In seventh in the points, we have Ben Rhodes, 240 points behind Riggs. In eighth, you have Hemrick, who's 241 back. You have Grant Enfinger, fresh off his victory, 252 back. And then on the bubble, you have Tyler Ankrum, who is 277 points behind. And then we look below the cut line. We have Stuart Friesen and Jake Garcia tied for 11th, 17 points back. Stuart Friesen owns the tiebreaker. And then we look at the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. Justin Allgaier has already locked up the regular season championship, first in the standings with 966 points, 240 points in front of Jesse Love. And then third in the standings, you have Sheldon Creed, who's 273 points back of Lil Gator. Ninth in the standings, back in the bubble battle, we have Parker Retzloff, 373 back. 10th in the standings, you have Sam Mayer, 411 behind. 11th in the standings, you have young Brent Cruz, 426 behind. And then only 1 point behind him, his teammate on the bubble, Taylor Gray, 427 points behind Justin Allgaier. And then we look below the cut line. 13th in the standings, we have Raja Karuth, 17 points behind Gray. And then we have William Sawalich, who is 21 points behind. These Joe Gibbs racing cars all around this bubble. And then we look at the NASCAR Cup Series and their top three in points plus the bubble battle. Denny Hamlin has the points lead with 791 points. Tyler Reddick, 24 points back. And then Ryan Blaney, 65 points back. We actually have a little bit of a battle brewing here at the end of the regular season on the Cup Series side. And then we look at the bubble battle. Tyler Reddick's teammate, Bubba Wallace, 13th in the standings, 298 points back of Hamlin. 14th in the standings, we have Austin Cindric, 321 points back. 15th in the standings, we have Shane Van Gisbergen, 322 points behind Hamlin. And then on the bubble, we have Eric Jones, 345 points behind Hamlin. And then we look below the cut line, 17th in the standings, we have three-time champion Joey Logano, 8 points behind Eric Jones. And then 18th in the standings, we have Ryan Preece, who's 26 points outside of the chase. All right, before we get started with everything that happened at Echo Park, we do got to quickly at least talk about Parker Kligerman's racetrack, Lime Rock Park. We got to talk about what happened at Lime Rock Park. Overall, I thought it was a good race. I like Lime Rock Park. I think it's a good racetrack. I think it's pretty well maintained. I'm not a big fan of them going to Lime Rock the week that everybody else is going to Atlanta. I think that's just kind of random, especially going to a road course. The Truck Series are going to a road course while the others are going to a super speedway-esque track. I just think that's kind of weird personally, but I think I've already said that before on here, so that's not really what we're discussing here today. But the Truck Series, and it seemed like the drivers that were going to compete for the win were going to be Caden Honeycutt, Lane Riggs, and maybe even Thomas Annunziata, who a lot of people don't know about Thomas Annunziata. He was out there, won the ARCA race, and looked really strong in the Truck Series race. Potentially could have won. His car ended up getting lit on fire. He ended up having to go to the hospital afterwards. Luckily, he is okay. He breathed in some flames, as he would say. Breathed in a lot of smoke and probably had his lungs worked on a little bit while he was in the hospital. He wasn't in there very long, so luckily he is okay. And then the other two, Gio Ruggiero, just kind of took him out. And I like Gio, but this isn't the first time we've kind of seen something from Gio. He kind of just gets overly aggressive in these sort of moments when he's up near the front. It's something that he's had issues with. Kind of reminds me of what Sammy Smith was doing a couple years ago, kind of similar to that. What he was doing with Gibbs, and when he first showed up at JRM, if he was up at the front, he was probably causing something. But if he wasn't at the front, he was pretty chill, just got lost in the moment battling for the lead. And I think that's kind of what happened here with Gio. Ended up taking out the leaders, which is very unfortunate. I'll start with Cory on this one. Cory, what were your thoughts on the race that we saw at Lime Rock Park? At this point, it was almost a week ago over there, but how did you feel about the race?
I think the race was good. I think, it was going to be the Lane Riggs and Caden Honeycutt show is what it seemed like. Then Grant Enfinger pulled it off. I I was a little upset at Gio. I think you said it perfectly that he got in over his head. I feel like, man, he wrecked all of the leaders in that one turn. Like all the people that deserved to be fighting for the win got wrecked in that in that. I mean, just by Gio missing the turn. And but I mean, I feel like karma got to him a little later. But I
Yeah,
was impressed with Landon Lewis, dude. Landon Lewis, I honestly like was watching him throughout that race, even when it was Honeycutt and Riggs in first and second. He was in fourth or fifth, running better laps or just as good as laps, and that equipment compared to their equipment is crazy. And then I think he was very professional to not. I feel like he was good enough to beat Grandin Figure in those final laps. I feel like
more than
he
good
just
enough.
didn't want to. He didn't want to wreck him, and I think he was more afraid of wrecking him than he was winning. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if that makes any sense. That he
It
didn't
does.
want to make a mistake, and a second place for that team is a win. You know, and I know he's on my radar. That race put him on my radar because like, he was running lap times just as good as Honeycutt and Riggs when they were up there. He was just fourth or fifth and had some bad restarts. So that's a name to keep looking out for, Landon Lewis.
Anything you got to say about Imfinger getting back to victory lane?
Yeah, that was cool. I was happy to see him win. Sorry, I skipped that, but yeah,
You're
no,
good.
Grant Enfinger. It's been a while. I mean, it's also nice to not see Lane and Honeycutt up there battling for the win. It's good to see some other drivers be up there. And Grant, it's been a while, and he deserves it, man. He's a hard worker. So, yeah. The Truck Series race was good. I don't know if Cup or Xfinity should ever go there, but that race was good.
Yeah, I don't know if O'Reilly or Cup should go there because
Chip,
I don't even know if the facility could really handle that amount of people. I'm not exactly sure. I think it's a great racetrack, and there's just with there's so many road courses up in the air for the Cup Series and the O'Reilly Series to race at. So I don't know if Lime Rock would find a spot on that schedule. Unfortunately, I do think it is a really good racetrack though. And you were talking about Landon Lewis and Grant Enfinger. I've been a big fan of Grant Enfinger for a long time. He's a hardworking guy. He reminds me a lot of these older NASCAR drivers. He seems like a NASCAR driver that's from like the 80s or something. I've always been a big fan of Grant Enfinger. Stuart Friesen, I've praised Stuart Friesen a bunch. I kind of put Grant Enfinger in the same boat as Friesen. They're racers, you know. They're old fashioned guys. They're out there to race. They're out there to win, you know. They don't care about the money per se. They don't care about the popularity or the notoriety. They don't even necessarily care about moving up. They just want to race. They just want to race. And Grant back to victory lane with CR9, I think is very cool to see. But I think the bigger story, and you were talking about him, Cory, was Landon. Landon Lewis being mentored by Ron Hornaday, came through Kevin Harvick's agency or whatever you want to call it, KHI management. He's been racing the late models for a while. He's a fantastic young race car driver. I wouldn't quite put him up to the standard that I hold like a Connor Zilisch or a Corey Heim or maybe even a Brent Cruz. I know Brent Cruz hasn't won yet, but I see it in him for sure. I can see that in Landon Lewis as well. I think Landon Lewis could be on the level of those guys potentially. I'm not gonna go as far like with Brent Cruz. I'm like, yeah, he's gonna get there. I'm positive Brent Cruz is gonna get there and he's gonna be a star in our sport. I'm not as confident in Landon Lewis as I am in Brent Cruz per se, but I think he could get there. This kid is extremely talented, and like you said, Cory, at the end of that race, he was better. He was flat out better than Grant at the end of that race, and he had a half dozen opportunities to either move him out of the way or wreck him or do whatever he wanted, and he clearly wanted to get that first career win the right way, and he just never found the Grant didn't run perfect laps, but he didn't go off track. He didn't make any mistakes. So Grant didn't give it up, and that was probably the only way that Landon was going to get past him at the end of that race. Because like you said, I don't think Landon wanted to move him out of the way or wreck him, and wanted to race him clean to get that first career win, and just wasn't quite enough to get that first win this past weekend. But he's probably winning a race fairly soon, whether that's in the Truck Series or the O'Reilly Series. He hasn't made any O'Reilly starts yet, but I assume those are in his future. He's coming on. He's part of this next group of young drivers. I would include him in the Brent Cruises, in the Ziliches, in the Corey Heims. And we'll have to see if he's able to live up to what those guys have been able to do so far. But Tyler, how did you overall feel about this race? We had Gio take out the leaders. We had Thomas Annunziata have a great race. He also won the ARCA race. He looked like he was going to potentially win this race, which would have been very good for him in his career. I think that would have been a great moment for him. And then we had the battle at the end of this race with Grant Enfinger and Landon Lewis. If we got a caution at the end of this race, Honeycutt probably wins though too, because Honeycutt drives up to third. I think that's where he finished, was third. So a great comeback from him. But Tyler, what were your overall thoughts on this race and our winner, Grant Enfinger?
It was a great race. Lime Rock seems to put on a great race for trucks. Like you said, I don't think it'll ever host a Cup or Xfinity or God damn it, it's Corey's fault.
Damn it, Cory.
Cup or O'Reilly's fault. O'Reilly's race. We hate that guy. But you know it is what it is. They put on a great race for what they can provide, and it was a shit show there for after Gio's wreck. I gotta say that was very uncalled for in my opinion. But other than that, the race was a pretty great race.
Yeah, I think Gio, like Cory put, I think Gio got his karma later when Honeycutt put him in the grass. I don't know if that was intentional or not per se, but just the way, I like Gio too, but just the way that Gio races when he's up front and when he's with teammates, it doesn't seem to matter if people are teammates to him or not. I've noticed that with him. And at the end of these races, a screw comes loose for him at the end of these races. He'll be perfectly calm and race great 90% of the race, but if he's up front at the end of one of these races, he just tends to cause something, whether that's him wrecking himself or wrecking other people. I don't know what it is, but a screw goes loose for him at the end of these races, unfortunately. But it was cool to see the end of the race and have Enfinger go back to victory lane, and Landon Lewis, he's somebody to watch out for, y'all. He really is. Landon Lewis is a potential future winner in the Cup Series. Who knows? I don't know how far his career could go, but this kid has a bright future, I think. We'll have to see where it takes him, because not every super talented driver ends up being a success. Like, look at Shane Meal, I think, is the biggest example. I know Tyler remembers Shane Meal. He was probably the biggest prospect to come to NASCAR in a long time, and struggled on, and clearly had a lot of struggles off the track as well with drugs and stuff like that. But he didn't just quite live up to the expectations that he was expected of him. I would consider him probably the biggest bust in the history of NASCAR. And I'm curious if any of these young guys if they're all going to make it, if some of them are going to be busts or not. I'm very curious on what happens with Landon Lewis when it comes to all that. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about the truck series at Lime Rock? What do you think the future is for Lime Rock in NASCAR in general? Our winner, Grant Enfinger, young driver Landon Lewis. Also, how do you feel about that wreck with Gio, Lane Riggs, and Caden Honeycutt, and then Thomas Annunziata, the pretty unknown driver to most, has overall a great day, winning the ARCA race, and possibly could have won the truck race if he didn't get lit on fire. He possibly could have won that race, because especially with Honeycutt and Riggs getting involved in their wrecks, Thomas Annunziata was probably the third best guy. But let us know your thoughts about all that in the comments. But let's talk about the rest of this O'Reilly Series race at this point, because I think we're all kind of in agreement. Like, even Tyler, who really liked the end of this race, I think Tyler would probably agree that most of this race was kind of a shit show. I mean, we had some good racing in there. We had some entertainment in there. But we had a lot of big wrecks. We had blown motors. We had so much cleanup. We had 4 red flags in this race, which is ridiculous. I don't know if that's a record or not. I feel like it would have been mentioned if it was a record for the O'Reilly Series, but 4 red flags in a single it's crazy if there's 1, let alone 4. That was just insane to me. It was just overall, I wouldn't say it was a bad race per se, but it wasn't what it should be. And it's not the track's fault, it's not the car's fault, but this one I put solely on the drivers. The drivers were the ones to blame for this some would say bad race. I really want to get Cory's thoughts on this, because Cory might actually say he thought this was a bad race, which I wouldn't blame him for. It was a lot of chaos and a lot of mayhem. But Cory, what were your thoughts on the O'Reilly Series race that we had on Saturday?
See, the thing is, like, it's it's hard to describe because stage 1 and stage 2 were really good. I mean, other than I think how many they had one red flag maybe between those stages, but stage 1 and stage 2 were good. The racing was good. They were driving clean, and then it got to stage 3, and the longest green flag run was 5 laps, which is insane because stage 3 is the biggest stage. And stage 3 is where, I mean, it's the most important part of the race because you're racing for a win, and
For sure.
we only got 5 green laps consecutively. Is insane. Like it was just another one, another one, another one, and like DJ Khaled stage 3 is what that should have been called. But like, dude, it was so long, and there was no racing to be had, which I I put it up there for one. That stage alone is one of the worst stages I have ever seen since stages came to
Wouldn't
be a
argue with
thing.
that.
Because like 5 laps of green flag racing. Imagine being there for that race, and then wh- always say you bring a new fan, and this is what they had to see. Like obviously that's not the standard, but that is one of the worst stages I have ever seen.
Yeah, that last stage was a sight to behold, I guess you could say. It was special in all the worst ways possible. I yeah, I agree. I don't know what happened at the end of that race. It just kind of turned into a shit show. Like I said, a good portion of that race was entertaining. You had some good racing and everything. I just feel like at the end of that race, it was like I said, it was all on the drivers. I said it before, it was all on the drivers. The drivers just got too aggressive. They just did too much. They did too much. Some of them probably even got a little nervous out there with it being the end of the race. Some of them not necessarily in positions that they're usually in. So that could have caused some things as well with the track aging. I think there's a lot of factors on why this happened at the end of the race, but I was honestly just disappointing to see. Like these are supposed to be some of the best drivers in the US, and they're just wrecking each other almost every lap. Like I said, we got Allgaier to victory lane. I overall thought it was a good finish to the race. Like those last couple laps overall, I'd say were entertaining. But overall, thumbs up, thumbs down. I'd probably give this race a thumbs down just because of how much it fell apart at the end of this race. Tyler, uh, we'll talk about your boy, Lil Gator, here in a second because he deserves his praise. He deserves to be talked about because Justin Allgaier is the hottest driver in the sport right now. Not even the O'Reilly series. I'd say he's the hottest driver in the sport, period. He's just killing it. Um, but what were your overall thoughts? Take away those last couple of laps, like pretend last like 5 laps didn't exist. What were your thoughts on the rest of this race?
And it was an overall shit show. Unfortunately, in this series, that happens occasionally, right? I mean, last year it happened 3 or 4 times that we just could not finish a race because no matter what they did, they were wrecking each
It's
other.
always Martinsville.
So it's always Martinsville. So I mean, it was nice to see it wasn't Martinsville this
Martinsville wasn't
time, I
Martinsville.
guess. I mean, it's really hard with this series because they have a tendency to be great athletes, and then they come in and remind you why they're the minor league series, and they remind you on why these guys are still learning. So I have to remind myself that sometimes that these guys are not our pro series. They're not the best that we have to offer because of this reason. There's a reason why these guys are stuck in this series, or they would all be in the Cup Series, not wrecking each other every 2 laps.
The Cup Series guys like to wreck each other a bunch too, though. Let's be a little fair. A little fair.
They do, but not so egregiously, right?
That's
Like I
true.
feel like and a lot of the times with the Cup guys, it's not their fault. This car is just difficult for them.
Yeah, that's why I was saying earlier. This wasn't on the car. This wasn't on the track. It wasn't on any of that. The end of this race was 120% purely on the drivers, whether it was inexperience, whether it was nervousness, whether it was just stupidity. Like the end of this race was purely on the drivers just not knowing how to handle the end of the race at Atlanta, and it just kind of ruined the end of this race, unfortunately. Like I said, those last couple of laps were entertaining. I'm not going to sit here and act like the last 5 laps weren't, but the rest of that last stage was just the lead up to that was just awful. It was just awful. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about the O'Reilly Series race on Saturday? What were your overall thoughts on it? We had 4 red flags. I think we had, 13 cautions. Just an insane end to this race. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. Or let's move on to our race winner, the Gator, Lil Gator. Justin Allgaier gets another one. I don't even know how many wins. How many wins is that? Is that like 6 or 7 or 30? How many wins does he have? He has a bunch of wins.
I think it was 6.
6. He already has a bunch of wins on the season. He's just killing it. I said a little earlier in the show, I'll say it again now. I don't think he's just the hottest driver in the O'Reilly series. I think he's the hottest driver in all of NASCAR. He's killing it. He's killing it. Even when he's doing bad, he's still doing pretty good. It's just I don't know what to make of it. This guy is ridiculous. And it's at a track like Atlanta where I think it's not necessarily anybody's race because there's handling involved and stuff, but there's more than just two, or every single week there's usually 2 or 3 people that it can realistically win the race unless something crazy happens. In this race, there's realistically 15, maybe 20 people that could win this race unless something crazy happens. Then it could be even more. And Allgaier wins this race, gets another win. He locked up the regular season championship. He locked getting into the chase a couple of weeks ago. This we said it last year. Connor Zilich's last year in 2025 was the greatest season for a race car driver in the history of the O'Reilly Auto Parts series. Well, in the very next year in 2026, Justin Allgaier might be able to one up that, because Zilich didn't win the championship. We all think he deserved to win the championship, and he should have won the championship, but it's just not how it worked last year. And he didn't win the championship, even though he had a bunch of wins. Well, Allgaier could maybe pass him in his win total on the year. He could potentially get the championship in Homestead with the way this system, bringing back the old system, essentially works. He's clearly the favorite, and he's clearly the hottest driver right now. I don't think anybody has anything for Allgaier. I'm going to go to the boys on this one. I'll start with Cory. I feel like we're beating a dead horse on this because I feel like we talk about it. Maybe not every week, because I'll be honest, the last, 3-4 weeks, Allgaier has still done well, but he hasn't done as well as I think we'd expect. He's also gotten involved in a couple of wrecks here and there, so maybe it wasn't the best last couple of weeks for Allgaier. But I feel like we talk about him, if not every week, every other week, because this guy is just something special. I'll say it again. He deserves a shot in the Cup Series. At this point, I don't think he cares, but he deserves to be a full-time Cup Series guy. He's a Sunday guy. He's been a Sunday guy for almost a decade now. What are your thoughts on Allgaier so far this season and him winning the race at Hotlanta?
Man, we all love Justin Allgaier. Let's just start off by saying that. And he is absolutely killing it this year. It's just if you look at the standings, he has 6 wins. The next are Cory Day and Austin Hill with 2. But where he's killing it the most, that most people aren't talking about, is he has 13 top 5s, and the next closest person has 8.
That's insane.
He has 5 more. 5 more top 5s than the next person. 16 top 10s out of 21 races. When he's not winning, he's finishing in the top 5, and when he's not finishing in the top 5, he's finishing in the top 10. He is just having a great year and capitalizing off having the best equipment, and it's hard not to be a fan of Justin Allgaier. He's just a great person, and he's a grinder, and he's been the father of the series for the past, 5 years. People could say he's been in it for so long that everyone's a fan of Justin Allgaier, and I think we'll all be a fan, or we'll all be rooting for him to win another championship. But man, he's making that series not interesting. He's already won the regular season, championship with 3 more races to go before the chase. He locked it up with 4 races in the 4th race to go before the chase, and it's just dang, man, you kind of wish there wasn't a points reset because he's 260 points ahead of second. So hopefully, for his sake, he keeps the momentum into the chase. But Justin Allgaier is killing it.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons why I said before, and I think we all kind of want the old Winston Cup point system back. What we have right now is a happy medium. I'm overall happy with it. I would still prefer the Winston Cup old way of points where there is no chase or playoffs or anything like that. because the season that Allgaier is having is historic, and he could win the championship by a bunch, and he deserves to win the championship by a bunch. And if somebody makes the comeback, then they make the comeback, But I'm not for the points resetting here in a couple of weeks because Allgaier's just been so dominant. He's gonna by the time we get to the chase, he's gonna have like a 300-point advantage on second, and it's gonna get shrunk down to what, like 15 points or something like that. I forget how much it gets shrunk down to, like 20 points, something like that, which is just, yeah, Allgaier deserves so much more. But I think that's a different conversation per se. But Allgaier is just having a phenomenal season. Tyler, this is your chance to talk everything you want about your boy, because I know Justin Allgaier is your favorite in the O'Reilly series. I'm curious, is he your favorite driver in NASCAR overall, or is that Noah? I don't know who your favorite overall NASCAR guy is, but how does this feel seeing Allgaier just dominate like he is this season?
Oh, Justin's 100% my favorite guy. When Jeff left, he's the only reason why I stayed with the sport at all. So I'd have to give it my flowers to Justin every time, and that's why I panicked when I heard he was retiring this year. I'm not gonna lie. I don't need that right now. I'm not ready. But yeah, the man's having an unforgettable season. He's absolutely killing it. You can't ask for better than what he's given us. Last few weeks, he's been taking a minute, just kind of feels like just ride around for a minute and get his breath back. Um, he's then a whirlwind. He thought he was going to retire a year ago, and now he's like winning every single race he steps into. Everybody's telling him he's insane if he retires, and he's panicking, trying to get sounds like panicking, trying to get sponsors and all that on board and to make sure that he can stay, because it sounds like it was a little bit more worked out for retirement than we thought it would be. So, um, I absolutely hope he wins this championship. He absolutely deserves it. I don't think, even if with the point restart, I don't think there's no slowing him down this year. And if they do, so be it. This is still an unforgettable season for him either way.
Yeah, this season is very unforgettable for Justin Allgaier and all of his fans and all the NASCAR fans as well overall. Because we've been watching Justin Allgaier for years. He's been in NASCAR for 20 years at this point. He's been around a long time, and just seeing him have the success that he is right now, like I said before, he's been a Sunday guy for, in my opinion, probably about 10 years at this point. The guy is ridiculously talented, and he's just never had that golden big break. I mean, I guess Junior, but Junior doesn't. If Junior went cup racing, if Junior stopped being so cheap and went cup racing, then maybe Allgaier would be cup racing on Sundays, because the guy is just amazing. He's leaps and bounds way better than the rest of that field in every single way that you could think of, when it comes to just overall speed, when it comes to handling, when it comes to when and when not to be aggressive, when it comes to just his IQ is ridiculous. It's just I don't know what else to say about Allgaier that we haven't already said, because this guy is just amazing. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. How is Allgaier so far doing this season? Gets the win at Hotlanta at Echo Park Speedway after maybe not the most entertaining race, but definitely a lot of wrecks if you're into that. But let us know your thoughts about all that in the comments down below. All right, this will let us move on to the Cup Series race, which, in my opinion, was an amazing race. I'd probably make the argument for the best race of the season. I would have to probably think about that a little bit more, but I would make the argument for that. I think there's some people that may not have liked the race as much as maybe we did. I think all of us were pretty fond of the Sunday race, but I think there is definitely some people that weren't quite as fond about it, didn't necessarily hate it per se, but I think they were expecting what we've been having with Hotlanta, with Echo Park Speedway, with the 3-wide racing, it being very similar to Daytona Talladega, especially the beginning part of a run. It's just extremely racy and close quarters racing. And we saw that. I'm not going to sit here and say that we didn't see that. We definitely saw that throughout the race, but we saw a lot more separation than what we had in previous Atlanta races since the repave. We definitely saw more tire fall off. We saw a lot of comers and goers throughout the day. The one thing that was consistent, I think, throughout the day was Ryan Blaney is really fast. I think that was the one thing that was consistent before and after the rain delay. And we'll talk about Blaney here in a minute. But I just want to get the boys' thoughts on this race as a whole, because I overall loved this race because it felt like actual racing. It felt like actual racing. I know with super speedway racing, sometimes it doesn't really feel like actual racing. Everybody's just kind of going through the motions almost. That's why Atlanta's been entertaining the last couple of years, because it actually takes more skill than the current version of super speedways. And we'll talk about super speedways then potentially getting better here in a little bit with the horsepower change. But I felt like there was even more racing. I loved this race, and I'm excited to see how this track continues to age, because I think we've seen a couple of little signs of it aging, but I think this is the big sign right here. I think this is the big sign that we saw this past weekend, that this track is truly aging and becoming something else. And the question is, what does that become? Cory, I know you really liked this race too. I know you were a fan of this race. Give me your thoughts on the race we saw on Sunday as a whole. How did you feel about the racing that we saw? And what do you think the future may be for Hotlanta?
I agree with you that I think, minus the rain delay, that was up there for the best race of the year. Like,
Yeah.
stage 1 was its own race. Stage 1, you saw that a little bit of pack racing to start, and then the first 10 or 15 cars, it was single file, but people could still use runs to pass the car in front of them. And like, it was interesting. It was fun. It was a mix of everything you want Atlanta to be. Then stage 2 and stage 3, it stayed pack racing for the most of it, or before the caution or the rain, you know. And then after the rain came out, it was right back to pack racing, you know, and that's what is awesome about Atlanta right now, because it's not the fuel saving BS that you get at the super speedways, but you get everything we want the super speedways to be, and it's awesome. And it's like, you don't, like, you can be in the third lane, in the first lane, and I don't know if you listen to the spotters or not, but listen to the spotters is so awesome at Atlanta, because I'm sitting here listening to Larson, top of 3, bottom of 3, middle of 4, middle of 3, top of 3, bottom of 3. And I'm like, what is happening? Like, every lap, he's down here, he's up here, and that's everybody. Like, Carson Hocevar, they said he's, I forget, he had a tire go flat, was in the back of the field, and they said they were going to either say Richard Petty or Jimmy Johnson, which meant lap 48 or lap 43, go past the field, like, get back up there. And they did it, and he did. Like, he got back up to the front of the field. Like, you can make your way through the field if you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it was awesome to see. I think the only people that probably didn't like the race were people who don't like the same car being up front the entire time, and it's was because Ryan Blaney was dominating that race. But if you were watching more than just who was leading, that race was fantastic. Because even Ryan Blaney got passed, but Ryan Blaney just had such a good car that he could pass him right back. And yeah, anybody could have won it. Ryan Blaney obviously had the upper hand and finished it off, but that race was phenomenal. I hope it doesn't change much after this. Maybe it'll be fascinating to see how big of an impact next year is, like what happens between now and then, but it's flirting with greatness. Like, I think we can all agree we don't want it to change much. Like, it's pretty darn near perfect right now.
Yeah, I'm very mixed on it. I don't necessarily want it to change much per se, but I also want the track to take like a natural turn. You know, I want it to just naturally age over time. Like, I don't want us to repave and resurface this racetrack every couple of years just because we want like a certain type of racing per se. Because if we would resurface, for example, if we'd resurface the track right now to get a race that we had this past Sunday, it would take like what, another 3 years to really get that. So at that point, we're just kind of chasing. So I'm all for just letting this track age properly. And I honestly, I don't think it's going to be quite like the old Atlanta, because obviously it's not built the same. It has different banking and stuff like that. But I would say it might end up being similar to that, or like a smaller version of maybe like, I don't know, like Kansas or something like that. I don't know. Maybe that's a garbage take. Maybe it could become something like that at some point with the way it ages. And I think that's like a big mystery, is like, how is this track going to age? Because we've seen tracks where you need to brake and let off and really slow down, and we've seen those tracks age over time. And we've seen Daytona and Talladega age over time, but Daytona and Talladega, when they age, it just gets really bumpy. The cars seem to get a little bit looser around the racetrack. They just seem to slide a little bit more. But other than that, it doesn't completely change the way the track drives. And what I saw on Sunday was essentially a new racetrack. It wasn't like the Atlanta we've seen. It felt like a completely different racetrack that we have never been to before. And I think that threw a lot of the drivers and teams for a loop, and you saw it out there because you saw certain drivers having more, especially in that first stage. If y'all remember correctly, that first stage, there were some drivers that were struggling heavily, and there were some drivers that were just hitting it perfectly. Like the Penske guys just immediately pulled away at the beginning of that race because of the handling and the way just the track was. So I'm very intrigued to see how this track ages. And unfortunately, Corey, I do think it's not going to stay similar to this. I think it'll stay similar to this for maybe a year, maybe two, but it's going to continue to age. It's going to continue to age and continue to change, and we'll have to see how that change is. Is it a good change, a bad change? We'll have to see when we get there. But Tyler, how did you feel about the racing we saw on Sunday? How do you feel about the track surface and the way it's aging? What do you think the potential future could be for it? What were your thoughts on the race we saw on Sunday as a whole?
A damn good race. I mean, I was about ready to turn my TV off and fall asleep when we were going green, and then I was like, screw it, I'll just throw it on in the black background for a minute. I mean, 2 laps into it, I was wide awake watching every single move that was happening on the track. So, I mean, we've asked for that type of racing for years. We've begged for it. We haven't seen it since Talladega I swear, back in the early 2000s. So, I don't know, man. That was absolutely just beautiful racing. Beautiful racing. And if that means that they need to repave it when it falls off, then that's what they need to do, because I don't know. I enjoyed every second of it, and I'll give up a year or two of bad racing to get the damn good racing that follows, because wow. Absolutely wow.
Yeah, WoW is right. And yeah, like I was saying, when it comes to a repave, if they did decide to do a repave, it would be when they first would do the repave, we would essentially just repeat what we just did, where we went through like 2 years of it being pretty much a super speedway track. As long it depends on what materials and stuff they use, and that could always change things. But if they use the same materials, do everything the same, what would be expected would be like about 2 years, 3 years of just super speedway-esque racing that we've seen in Atlanta, that we've been used to seeing at Atlanta over the last couple of years, and then it would turn into this. Like I said, personally, I think the best move would be to let it at least age for a little bit longer and see what happens with the racetrack, and not jump the gun, because then at that point they're repaving it every like 3 years, and that's a lot of that's not cheap. That's a lot of money to repave a whole racetrack. Most of these tracks end up getting repaved once every 10, 15, 20 years. It takes a long time for a lot of these places to get repaved. Like Daytona hasn't been repaved since what, like I think 2009 or something. I think it's 2008, 2009 is when Daytona last got paved. A lot of these tracks take their time. So I'd say at least let it go 2 years and see how it is 2 years from now. If it's awful racing or whatever at that point, then yeah, I guess repave it at that point. I'd say it's a little bit early to repave it at this current moment. I think it's just a little early, but that's just my opinion. I think there's people like Cory and Tyler, they have differing opinions on this. And I think there's other people that probably have differing opinions on this as well. But I'd say let the track age for a couple of years, see what we have like 2 years from now. And if it doesn't look like it's going down a good path of racing, then repave it. If it seems like it's going down a good path of racing, maybe keep it for another year or two and then think about it again at that point. But I'm very interested to see what the future is for Hot Atlanta. I loved the racing we had on Sunday, and I'm hoping we have more good racing, whether it's a super speedway, whether it's what we saw on Sunday, whether it's like old Atlanta. I just want to see some good racing. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about the race for the Cup Series at Echo Park Speedway on Sunday, and the way the track is aging? What do you think the future is for the racetrack? Do you think it continues to age the way it is and maybe turns somewhat similar into an old Atlanta? You think they repave it in about a year or two? Let us know your thoughts in the comments on what the future could be for this racetrack. All right, let's move on to something that I think we talk about almost every week. There's always like a little bit of beef leaving the weekend, and our weekly beef this week is actually between Toyota teammates, not quite race team teammates, but they're part of the same meetings. They're part of the same weekly meetings and everything, and that being Ty Gibbs and Bubba Wallace. Get into an incident here. What was it? Stage 2 that this happened. Stage 2, beginning of stage 3, something like that. It was in the second half of the race, I think. You had Bubba Wallace that was high up on the racetrack. He cut all the way down to the bottom in front of Ty Gibbs. Ty Gibbs got into the back of him, spun him around. They had some words after the race. And overall, it seemed like that they were upset with each other, but at the same time, they knew they were Toyota teammates, and they're probably, in my opinion, they're probably going to be fine. I don't think anything's going to come from this. I don't think there's going to be any payback or anything like that, because the way I looked at this the wreck itself, I would say if I had to point the finger at anyone, I'd probably point it slightly at Bubba, but I would overall just say this is more of like a racing deal. Bubba Wallace comes all the way down at he was about to hit somebody or got loose or something. I can't remember why he came all the way down, but there was a reason why he came all the way down in front of Ty Gibbs, and he didn't. There was still a little bit of time maybe for Ty Gibbs to react, but at that point he's risking himself to either getting on the brakes or turning left or right really quickly. It's just kind of a spur of the moment sort of thing. So I think Ty Gibbs did the right thing on just kind of getting into the back of Bubba. I think that was probably his best option right there. I don't think he had too much of a choice. That's why I would slightly put the blame more at Bubba. But at the same time, I just look at this as like a racing deal. Just reactions, really. I don't think there's too much of it, and I think when they get more of a look at it and talk about it more, they'll probably feel very similar, that this really wasn't a big deal. I think it got made more of a big deal at the end of this race than it probably should have by Bubba and by I don't know about Ty, but Bubba seemed to make a little bit more of a big deal of it than Ty personally. But I want to get the boys' thoughts on this, starting with Cory. Cory, do you think anything comes from this accident that we saw on Sunday? And who do you ultimately put the blame at? And what do you think about the wreck we saw between Gibbs and Bubba?
I think you hit the nail on the head. It was a racing incident. I think Bubba's the one that made it bigger than what it had to be. Like,
I
he
agree.
was clearly mad after the race because of the point penalty. Like, that was on the top of his mind. And I don't know if he approached Ty or Ty approached him. Probably, I imagine Ty didn't have any solace towards it. Ty was probably just like, hey, like, you know, that was just an incident. I didn't have any time to react. If you're going to blame anybody for the incident, it's Bubba's fault. Bubba got loose, it looked like, and then went down to block Ty, almost is what it looked like. And he barely had enough room and was going 5 or so miles per hour slower than Ty. Is
Yeah.
Ty going to brake check and lose stage points just because Bubba's blocking him? Like, he clearly didn't wreck him or hit him intentionally. He just had nowhere to go. It's either he was good, they were both going to brake check. It was just a racing incident. But the thing that makes people mad at Bubba is the way he reacted after. And it wasn't anything egregious, but like expecting Ty to apologize for that when he didn't do anything wrong, and then saying, "Oh, it's just the way Toyota teammates race each other." I'm like, "Nope, that's not an issue. It was literally just that one mistake." And you can't go saying that about all of the Toyotas when it was just that incident. The Toyotas are like probably the ones that wreck each other the least, So like, yeah, I don't know. That was it. Honestly, it was just Bubba's reaction that made that incident a talking point. And it's one of those things where I think you and me and Tyler have all said that Bubba's maturity has gone up so much, especially since becoming a father. But that was that moment, that reaction, that Ty needs to apologize to me type of thing because he was mad about the points and everything that happened. Like, it just can't happen. Like I mean, it creates drama for sure, but like it won't go beyond this unless Ty reacts. But Toyota won't let that happen, and Toyota's definitely probably already said something to Bubba after him saying that about Toyota teammates. Like, I don't see it being anything. It's just Bubba made it a bigger deal than it ever was.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that, and I think, and I'll give Bubba a little bit benefit of the doubt, or a slight excuse, I should say here, that I think you briefly mentioned it there. I think he was right after that race, I think he was pretty pissed off about getting the black flag for passing underneath the yellow line, which I thought he was guilty of. I don't know if you agree with that, Corey, but I thought he was
I
guilty of.
agree.
Yeah, most of his car was underneath the line. I hate to see Bubba get a black flag because I'm a big fan of Bubba, and I want to see him get a good run. He's not necessarily right at the cut line, but he's somewhat close to the cut line. He had a great speed. He had a great day. Ultimately, he probably deserved a top 5, top 3 finish, and ended up getting a black flag for that. So I think in that moment he knows that he got a black flag, that he went from second to 29th, I think he ended up going to. So I think he was probably irritated in that moment, probably because of that as well. So at that point he was like, you know what? Fuck Ty. You know what I'm saying? He needed his anger to go somewhere. He needed his disappointment to go somewhere. So that's another reason why I just don't think this makes it out of this week. I don't think we're going to see any future beef between these two, at least not from this incident. Maybe like a year from now or at the end of the season, maybe something new happens between these two or something like that. I can't see the future. But when it comes to this
It
incident,
also
what's up?
it also doesn't help that Ty almost pushed him to a win.
Yeah.
Like Ty almost pushed him to a win if you think about it. Like if all would have went right on that turn,
Mm-hmm.
like that he would have pushed him to a win and wouldn't have been saying anything. You know what I mean? It was just bad circumstances that happened to be the same guy at the end of both stages. But like, yeah, no, I mean, and then we got to talk about that under the line thing. I think that's its own thing. But like the under the line, our thoughts on it, because that that is what sparked this whole Ty Gibbs Bubba Wallace thing. Because I feel like there was nothing there.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't feel like there was. I don't think there was too much. I mean, I understand why Bubba was upset because, and he probably didn't even see the replay at that point. You know, I could see why he was slightly upset because he was running a great race. He got spun out by a driver that he feels like is his teammate. But like I said, I don't really blame either side too much for the wreck. But if I have to point my finger at somebody, I would say Bubba because Bubba cut all the way down and pretty much gave Ty the option to either slam the brakes, try to avoid him, or run him over. And I think the safest move for Ty and Ty Gibbs' race, and you have to keep in mind, it's not just Ty Gibbs, it's his whole race team. You know, he's racing for his race team and everything too. So Ty Gibbs decided what was best for his race team, and that was to pretty much knock Bubba out the way, and Bubba ended up spinning. And I think that was the best option for Ty in that moment. There's not really much else he could have done. It's just, that's why I say, for the most part, I think it's kind of just a racing deal. Those things are going to happen. And like I said, I don't think Bubba saw the replay. Bubba was pissed off at the end of the race after getting his black flag. And I think he was making a bigger deal of it than he probably should have. And that's probably one of the reasons why Ty was like, yeah, I'm not going to give you an apology. I don't feel like I should need to apologize. You know what I mean? If anybody should apologize, it should be you. You know, that was probably Ty Gibbs' mindset, you know, and like I said, I don't really blame either side. I don't blame Ty Gibbs for kind of brushing Bubba off, but I also don't blame Bubba for getting pissed off with everything that happened to Bubba in the race. It's just, it is what it is. I think they're probably already made up. I don't see anything really coming from this at all. So
Yeah, it was definitely a racing incident for sure. I mean, Bubba just gets hot-headed. That's who Bubba is. That's who Bubba will always be. And everybody kind of takes that differently than the way they would take anybody else, which has always been strange to me, but whatever. Yeah, he's
Facebook.
Bubba. That's Facebook. That's just who he is. He's gonna get upset. And like you said, that black flag, I think, is really what the big deal was. Everything else was just icing on the cake, essentially.
Yeah, because I think if he gets that second place finish, and Cory kind of said it, I think if he gets that second place finish, even especially if he wins, you know, I think if he gets that second place finish, I don't think they even have a discussion on pit road. Personally, I don't think Bubba Wallace walks up to Ty Gibbs all pissed off if he gets second. You know, I don't see it. I don't see that happening. And yeah, yeah, tough finish for Bubba. Bubba probably deserved the top 5, so I understood why he was a little pissed off for sure. He has a lot of passion. He had a great day. And I also understand Ty Gibbs brushing him off because he probably looked at the wreck as like, bro, that was your fault. Why are you getting mad at me about that? That was on you, you know? So I could understand both of them being upset with one another. But I don't think there's anything coming. Oh, that's one thing I forgot to ask you, Tyler. Do you think really anything comes from this? I don't think anything comes from this. I think they're probably already fine with each other. They're probably already texting each other back and forth.
Nah, nothing comes out of this. I mean, he's 23-11. That's Joe Gibbs. They're gonna work that shit out quickly, whether they like it or not.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think much of that. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about this potential rivalry beef with Ty Gibbs and Bubba Wallace? I think all three of us are in agreement that the beef and the rivalry never even got started. So I think we're all good on that. But let us know your thoughts about all that in the comments. All right, next we're going to move on to kind of part of the same topic. Cory brought it up there in the previous topic, so I thought we'd kind of at least briefly talk about it, and that is the black flag that we were talking about with Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace got a black flag for passing underneath the yellow line on the back straightaway. I personally thought it was worthy of a black flag. He put pretty much his whole entire car underneath the yellow line. If like part of the tire is below the yellow, I don't know what the exact rule is. I don't know if it's a full tire needs to be below it or just part of the tire. I honestly don't know that part of the rule, and I don't think they've ever been really strict about that. If it was just like maybe like a little bit of the tire went below the yellow line, I probably would have said don't get, because he didn't even need to go that. He didn't even need to go that low. Bubba didn't even need to go that low. He had so much more space, and he went all the way below the line, took almost his full car below the line. I think he was just kind of lost in that moment and just wanted to get past people and forgot that there was a yellow line at the bottom of the track. I truly think that's what happened there. And I want to get the boys' thoughts on, do they think this was deserving of a penalty? And I think pretty much everybody is in agreement. Everybody that I've seen, I don't think I've seen anybody that says that this shouldn't have been a penalty. I think it 100% deserves a penalty. We need to be consistent with this stuff. Tyler, what did you think about Bubba going underneath the yellow line at the end of this race? And do you think it was deserving of a penalty?
No, I don't think it was deserving of a penalty. I mean,
Wow.
if he would have won the race, maybe if we would have gained crazy amounts of spots, I don't know. Like that, it just happened. Like it's not like anything anybody meant to do.
I somewhat get what you're saying, just because going off my last point, he did not need to go that low. He had no need to go as low as he did. He didn't need to go underneath the line. He was gonna get the spot either way. So I somewhat get that argument, but at the same time, like, rules are rules, and it wasn't like he went like an inch below the line or like a foot below the line. Pretty much almost his whole car went below the line. And if we want to be consistent with calling penalties, even though I don't want Bubba to get a penalty, get a black flag or anything like that, in my opinion, he 100% deserved the black flag. But like I said, I somewhat get Tyler's argument that, like, hey, he was going to pass him either way. It doesn't really matter, really, does it? But and for me it does. For me, it really does matter. I think he deserves to get the penalty because I think that's the thing we bitch about the most is inconsistency. Like, we don't like when certain things happen, but I think the thing we hate the most is inconsistency. And them not calling a penalty there would create inconsistency. So, Cory, what were your thoughts on the black flag? Do you think Bubba deserved the black flag? What do you think about the move and everything that he pulled on the back straightaway?
Because the rule's a rule, I think he deserves it. I think the way to look at it is he intentionally went. I don't think he went all the way down there on purpose, but
He
he
didn't.
went down there to pass.
Yes.
But he mistakenly went too far to pass. And anytime that has ever happened, people, and they don't get penalized, people yield the position, get back behind that driver, and then go. He said that, I mean, and you couldn't tell by the replays. He had the lead at one point in turn 3. So if he would have braked enough, he wouldn't have been out front leading the race half a turn or a turn later, you know?
Yeah.
So I think if he had two options and he chose to keep going and they penalized him for it, the other option was to actually concede the position, get back behind, I think, Hocevar, and hopefully he still clears Ty Gibbs by turn 3 and gets a good push. But he broke the rule. I mean, that's pretty simple stated like that. He broke the rule. I think that's the easiest way to describe it in my mind. He intentionally went down there to get around Hocevar, and he never got back behind Hocevar after he went below the line. And that's the way it's in the rule book. Should we have the rule? That's up for debate, but I'm pretty sure, like they say, don't go, you can go below a white line. You can't go below the yellow line. It's just, and he went below the yellow line. I mean, that's really it. It's more, should that rule be a thing, I guess. But yeah, I'm happy, not happy. He deserved to be penalized. I'd hate to see it because he had a really good race and then got turned at stage 2 and penalized at the end of the race. So, it was a really bad day, even though he had a really good car. But I mean, the rules are rules.
Yeah, that's kind of also been the story of Bubba's season. He has a good car a lot, but just doesn't have the finishes. And I think that's where a lot of his frustration comes from too. He's not getting the finishes that he probably deserves and wants. And like I said, a rule is a rule. And I like what you said there, Corey. Did he intentionally go underneath the yellow line? No, but he did intentionally try to improve his position. And in that move, trying to improve his position, he accidentally went below the yellow line. And accident or no, that's a penalty. Like an example I'll give right here is one of my favorite drivers who's not even racing in anything right now, Matthew DiBenedetto. He should, like, some people would make the argument he should have won at Talladega in the number 21 car. I don't know how many years ago that was. Maybe like 5 years ago, 4 years ago, whenever he was in the 21 car. He got, I wouldn't say he got completely forced below the yellow line, but he went to go make a pass to the inside, similar to Bubba, and he went below the yellow line and he won the race, but then they took it away because he went below the yellow line and got a black flag. So Matthew DiBenedetto never won a race in the NASCAR Cup Series and probably never will, unfortunately. And that's just kind of what I saw here with Bubba. Bubba didn't intentionally go underneath the yellow line, but he went below the yellow line and he improved his position. Maybe if right after he went underneath the yellow line, he immediately like hit the brakes and gave up all the positions that he was potentially gaining, then maybe I would look at this a little differently. Like, okay, maybe he shouldn't get the penalty because he realized he messed up and he gave the spots back. Rule is a rule. Maybe he should be penalized, but in that instant, he penalized himself. He policed himself in that scenario. So at that point, I wouldn't give him the penalty. But the fact he went to the inside to make a pass below the yellow, and then maintained his position and didn't attempt to give those positions back. I think it's cut and paste. I don't think there's really too much a debate. It has to be, if we want to be consistent, it has to be a black flag if we want to be consistent. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about the incident with Bubba Wallace getting a black flag at the end of the race? Could have finished second, ended up finishing 29th. Let us know your thoughts about all of that in the comments down below. All right, a discussion this week, and we discussed it a couple weeks ago. A big discussion this week has been about Sunday night races, prime time Sunday night races with NASCAR and the Cup Series in particular, and what everybody's thoughts are on it. Do we like Saturday racing? Do we like Sunday racing? I think and I'm probably going to say the same thing that I think we all pretty much came to an agreement last week. I don't mind the occasional Sunday night race for like one of these like prime races, or like a race that is the day before a holiday. Like most people are going to be off of work or off of school on Monday. Like, so I'm not against them doing a Sunday night race on situations like that, like Labor Day weekend, like Memorial Day weekend, stuff like that, So I don't mind a Sunday night race in those occasions, and maybe even the occasional like crown jewel or big time race that's going to get a lot of viewers, as long as it's not during football season. I would probably be okay with that. But for the most part, I want the Saturday night racing. I think the Saturday night racing is it's just better. It's better for the fans. It's better for everybody, because then there's a lot of people, like, for example, with the Atlanta race on Sunday with the Cup Series, that race didn't finish up till almost 2 a.m. on Monday. So, and I was surprised how many people were still in the stands. There was actually a lot more people in the stands than I expected at the end of that race, but a lot of people definitely still cleared out, whether that was because they have to go to work the next day, whether they had to travel far distances, or whatever the case may be. They weren't able to finish watching that race because of the long rain delay that we had to start this race off. So ultimately, what I would say is, if we're going to do night racing, try to do them on Saturdays only, unless it's like a big to-do sort of event, or the day after the race is a holiday, like a Memorial Day, like a Labor Day, something like that, where a lot of people are going to get off of work and a lot of people are going to get off of school. Then I'm okay with them doing a Sunday night race. Because if you do a Saturday night race, even if it rains a bunch and potentially rains out, you can still race on Sunday, where a lot of people can still show up and watch the race. When if you do it on Sunday night, if you end up pushing it till Monday, there's a good chance a lot of people aren't going to be able to attend. It's just the nature of the beast, and we've seen that for years with Sunday day races. But it makes it even more difficult with Sunday night races because even with the delay, a lot of people are going to clear out whether that's them clearing out of the stands or them clearing out what's on their TV and putting something else on. So I overall, I'm okay with a couple of Sunday night races, but for example, this past weekend at Atlanta probably should have been a Saturday night race or just not a race on Sunday during the day because of how hot it is, but probably should have been a Saturday night race. But I want to get the boys' opinions on this. We'll start with Tyler. Tyler, we discussed this a couple weeks ago, but how do we feel about Sunday night racing versus Saturday night racing, and what do you think NASCAR should do about Cup Series and night racing?
I miss Saturday night racing. Everybody knows that about me. It's was a huge part of my childhood, and it feels just like an empty space that's missing at this point. So I don't know. I almost couldn't watch the race on Sunday, and I probably shouldn't have because I was tired as hell for work in the morning. So I don't know. It's a hard one because I get it, but at the same time, let's please just do the right thing and put these night races back on Saturday night.
Well, honestly, now that I really think about it, Saturday night racing is kind of part of where my love for NASCAR really started, really, because I went to Richmond a couple times when I was a kid, and those were all Saturday night races. The first race that I went to that wasn't at Richmond was at Daytona for the night race, 4th of July weekend on Saturday night. So, like, if I really, me thinking about it, probably the first 4 or 5 races I ever attended were Saturday night races. And now we don't really see a lot of Saturday night races. I think we have what, one or two throughout the year? Does I think Richmond races on Saturday night, and I think that's it, right?
I believe so, and I'm in the same boat. I fell in love with Phoenix when Phoenix had the lights put in, and it was the big thing to have the Phoenix Saturday night race. So
Mm-hmm.
it's the same exact thing for me. Same exact time I fell in love with Phoenix is when they started doing, or with NASCAR is when I started going to Phoenix, and they put those lights in.
I think that's one of the reasons why we all really like the Truck Series too. Even though the Truck Series gets gnarly, almost every race of the Truck Series is a night race. They're not all of them, but a good portion of them are night races because they're usually ran on Friday nights when people are off of work. So I love night race. It always makes things better too. It always makes the racing better. It makes it more entertaining. I don't know what it is, but seeing those sparks on the racetrack just always light a fire, not just in me, but in the other competitors and the drivers and the teams. Night racing is just it's a different beast. It's a different animal, and it just provides a different product. It just does. So I don't want to see night racing go away. I want night racing to always have their part in the Cup Series, but I think it should primarily just be on Saturdays. And if we end up sacrificing a couple of viewers for it, so be it. It is what it is. I think it would be better especially for the fans at the track. I think Saturday night fans at the track it would be best for because then you're gonna have a big party afterwards too if the race goes off without a hitch. Then Saturday night, imagine this Saturday night imagine if we went to Atlanta Motor Speedway and it was Saturday night racing and Chase Elliott won the race in this spectacular race at his home racetrack. The party in that infield and the party outside the track would just be insane. It would be so much fun. It would be so much fun. So I think it would just be better to do the Saturday night racing compared to the Sunday night racing. Like I said, unless it's like Labor Day weekend or something like that, then I'm probably okay with it. Uh, and I'll send it to Cory, and Cory is the one that kind of put this thought that I have in my mind about Saturday night, Sunday versus Saturday night racing, where Sunday night do it during a holiday weekend or something special or something like that, but then Saturday then have the other night races be on Saturday. Cory's the one that kind of first put this thought into my head, so I'm curious on what Cory's current thoughts are on the situation when it comes to Sunday night racing versus Saturday night racing, and should there be night racing at all in the Cup Series? Cory, what are your thoughts on the Sunday versus Saturday?
It's the same as what you said and the same as I said earlier. I think the only time they should ever do Sunday night races is in the summer and on holidays that fall on the Sunday because that'd always be something cool to watch is a NASCAR race at night on a holiday. So, but there's 3 Saturday night races, just to let you know. It's Richmond, Daytona, and Bristol have Saturday night races, which I think are awesome. I think, like Tyler said, like you said, it's just more convenient for traveling to the track for people that are at home watching the race and have to work on Monday. Saturday night's just more beneficial. And it's just going to be a better experience because you can stay up later and have Sunday to be off and not have to worry about work.
Yeah, I just think it's by far the better move to do it on Saturday for most of these things. It just makes the most sense. And I just love night racing. Like I said, I don't want night racing to go away. I know there's been debates about night racing going away just because it doesn't get as many viewers usually as the day races, and especially if it's on a Saturday night, because then some of the casual fans aren't even going to know they're racing on Saturday. They'll assume they're racing on Sunday. There's a lot. It's mainly TV stuff that gets played into this and why it's Sunday versus Saturday. I think if NASCAR was at its full strength, viewership and popularity wise, we'd be having more Saturday night races. Freaking Tyler would get his Phoenix night race that he's been wanting back so freaking bad. But Tyler, I'm sorry, it's never gonna happen unless we get more fans. It's just not. Especially if we get some of these international fans. If we get some of these international fans, it doesn't
If
matter
you
at
want
that point.
fans, then let's do night races. Like, I don't understand. They can't understand the math on that. Y'all took something away, lost fans. Give it back. More fans come back. Like, how'd you give us back everything?
I want to see. I think we all just want to see more night races. We love night racing. Seeing the sparks, seeing the drivers, seeing the fans. Just everything just comes up a notch. Everything's just a little bit more hype and a little bit more exciting when you put it underneath the lights. So we want to see night racing. We don't want to see night racing go away, but at the same time, we don't want to see a lot of Sunday night racing. We want to see Saturday night under the lights, Cup Series, Thunder. We want to see that. We want to see that stuff. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about night racing in the Cup Series as a whole? Saturday versus Sunday? You prefer Sunday night racing? You prefer Saturday night racing? What do you think the future is for night racing in the Cup Series even? Let us know your thoughts about all that in the comments down below. All right, let's move on to our race winner. Ryan fucking Blaney. RFB, aka the guy that might have just saved Cory's season in weekly picks. And we'll talk about that a little later. But Ryan Blaney just kicked all sorts of ass. He just looked so dominant. And he's also a great super speedway racer too. He's won a bunch of super speedway races. He's won some photo finishes obviously. He's a great racer overall, a great super speedway racer. And those Penske cars were hooked up because Logano looked very strong throughout a good portion of the race. Cindric looked pretty good as well. I'd say Barry didn't look very competitive, but the other three definitely did. And Blaney was just the standout of the whole field. And you were talking about it a little bit earlier, Cory. It wasn't like it was to the point where nobody could pass Blaney. People were able to pass Blaney, but then Blaney would come back like 2 or 3 laps later and make the pass back. It almost reminded me of like what we've seen from Austin Hill in the O'Reilly series at these super speedway races. Can people get past Austin Hill? Yeah, but most likely Austin Hill is going to pass you right back because his car is just so much better than your car is. And that's kind of how I felt about Blaney on Sunday night. He was just the cream of the crop. He was the top of the pole all night long, pretty much. Just a great run from RFB. And I'll let Cory talk about it because Cory did pick him last week in weekly picks. Cory, Ryan Blaney gets the dub. How did we overall feel about his performance? And some people are even beginning to think that Ryan Blaney, if the Fords are able to get their act together, that Ryan Blaney could maybe go after Denny and Reddick. I think it's too late for that, personally. I think he's too far back at this point to do that, especially with how good the Toyotas are. I just don't see it. But do you see it maybe? What do you think about Blaney's performance on Sunday? Do you think he has any chance at this regular season title still?
Yeah, Blaney was dominant, and I think they threw up a stat that's the most laps led at a speedway type track since Dale Earnhardt, which I think was a stretch because it was more laps at Atlanta than there is, at Daytona and Talladega. But that race was awesome. I was obviously because he was my pick. I was rooting for Blaney. I was also rooting for Larson and watching everybody else and jumping between radios and just
Larson
that
had a good
race
day.
was just so. I mean, other than being the only person to pretty much wreck, everyone else kept it clean and he wrecks twice.
I touched the
But
spot there.
no, but the literally like that race was so awesome. And me rooting for Blaney for that race made it even more awesome. But that was just he was the class of the field. And My only fear of this track going forward with what we saw on stage 1 is, and this is just a fear, little like note, is that if they're able to branch out like Penske did in the very beginning, him and Logano, and then they're able to actually block like the Toyotas did later with, I think, Gibbs and Bell, where it
Yeah.
was just they were the first two, and when someone went low, Bell blocked low. Like, you could have where one team just dominates the race. That's one fear I have with the track aging like it is. But I mean, that we'll talk about that if that ever comes. Hopefully it doesn't. But the Blaney's dominance was awesome. I was speaking with Kirk or Sparky, and seeing him get a photo with him afterwards is awesome. Him just,
The
yeah, dude.
bike. The
That
bike.
race was, yeah, and then the bike, dude. Like, all of it was just legendary. Riding a bike without a helmet on the track after winning at 3 in the morning.
Just
You know
backwards
what I mean?
cap.
Like, yeah, legendary, dude. That was just a great race. That's the first time my dad and I watched an entire race from start to finish together, even with it ending at like 11 p.m. That's how good of a race it was.
Yeah, it was a great race, and yeah, but that was probably the thing I liked to see the most out of the weekend. I didn't know he got a bike, I didn't know he won a bike for winning the race, and I was like, oh, he's taking pictures with the bike in victory lane. That's cool. Then I see this video pop up of him like zooming down on how fast he was going. He was going pretty fast though. Zooming down the front straightaway with just a backwards cap, just zooming like 3 o'clock in the morning at Atlanta on the track surface. That was one of the most American badass things I've seen in NASCAR in a while. That was just cool. That was so cool, and that's one of the reasons why I love Blaney. Like, Blaney's not necessarily one of my favorite drivers, but he's one of my favorite, if not my favorite, personalities in the sport. I love the guy. I love what he brings personality wise. He's just out there to have a good time, and he's made for our sport. Ryan Blaney is. I've said it before. Like, I know Elliott's the face and he's the most popular guy, but Blaney should be the most. Like, if we're being honest, Blaney should be. I know Tyler's going to say Hocevar, but I think Blaney should be. Blaney should be the guy. I love Blaney. He's just, and he dominated the race. I don't know what else there really is to say. He just looked really, really, really good all race long.
If Blaney drove for Hendrick, I guarantee you that Elliott Blaney most popular would be a lot closer than it is. I know Chase Elliott's the son of Bill Elliott and all that, but I'm just saying, like,
But he's the son of
if
Dave Blaney.
yeah, exactly. No, I'm kidding. It's
That's
the
what I'm
same
saying.
thing. No, I'm
It's the same
kidding.
thing.
But no, but if Blaney drove for Hendrick, I guarantee you that vote would be a lot closer,
It
especially
would be.
with
It
the
would be.
stash he has now.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that I don't really know. That's one of the things too with that I think should really go into this whole popularity thing too is there's a lot of people that don't like Elliott or dislike Elliott. Like, I don't hate Elliott, but I dislike Elliott a little bit, but that's not even really on his racing or really his personality. I want him to do more because he's the most popular guy. That's the reason why I don't necessarily really like Chase Elliott. But I don't know anybody that doesn't like Ryan Blaney. I don't think I've ever met anybody that just dislikes Ryan Blaney. How do you dislike Ryan Blaney? Maybe if he wins 5 races in a row or something, then yeah, there'll be people that dislike Ryan Blaney. But just as a personality and a person or sport, I don't think there's much there to dislike. I just don't think there's a lot there. Tyler, Ryan Blaney kicking all sorts of ass. What do you got? I don't know what else there's really to be said about this guy.
And I love Ryan Blaney just as much as the next guy. I think the most impressive part about it, though, is that he's doing it in a Ford, and he's the only one doing it in a Ford. So,
Exactly.
if anything, it proves how damn good he actually is because his equipment is absolutely garbage. I mean, there's nobody in a Ford that's keeping anywhere near him. So, honestly, he's probably the best one in NASCAR right now if you look at equipment versus talent wise.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Tyler. And we talked about it earlier on in the year. Obviously, Blaney's re-signed to Penske and everything, so it doesn't matter anymore now. But there was not necessarily rumors, but there was at least a little bit of talk that Blaney was at least in the discussion to potentially take over for Bowman over at Hendrick. And I think what you're saying, Tyler, just proves even more why, in my opinion, he should have went to Hendrick. That's just my opinion. I think he should have went to Chevrolet, went to Hendrick, and drive the 48 or the 25 or whatever car they want it to be. Because, like you just said, Tyler, Ford is struggling because, like I said, at the beginning of the race, Logano and Cindric, I'd say, were the second and third best cars in the race. But as the race went on, Logano and Cindric began to fall back a little bit. They still had good speed, but they weren't the second and third best cars in the field anymore. When it didn't matter if lap 1, lap 2, lap 3, the final lap, don't matter. Every single lap of that race, Ryan Blaney was the best car and the best driver in the field. So I can't imagine if he was at Hendrick
Also-
right now.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt there.
You're good? Go.
I was saying also to answer your question about winning the regular season championship, I totally think he can do it.
You think he can do it? How much is he back? I take it you're looking at the points right now.
He's behind by 60, which you can get in a race or two. And for him, he's more dominant or has a better car at short tracks. And before the regular season's up, we got North Wilkesboro. Penske's always good at Indy, so he's going to be good at Indy. Then there's Iowa, then there's Richmond, then there's New Hampshire, and then it ends on Daytona, which Penske is good at super speedways.
All those
So
are
I
Blaney
think
tracks.
all of those are Blaney tracks. But then when you talk about the actual championship is when it's like mile and a half where the Toyotas have the advantage. So regular season championship, I think he absolutely has a chance. But then there's a lot of mile and a halves to like to end or go for the actual chase, which I think he's he's behind Toyota. So Denny and Tyler are definitely gonna have the advantage in the actual chase.
Well, as long as these cars continue to act the way they are, because we've seen it before, especially with Penske. Like Penske will be like, they're okay, they're doing pretty well. Then we get down to the last 10 races, and it's like bam, 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 bam. They're just all of a sudden killing it as a race team, you know. And we saw that with Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus. Like that's why a lot of people thought, oh, they're cheating, or they got the golden horseshoe stuck up their ass. That's why all that stuff was said about Jimmy and Chad, because the first 26 races of the season, they were like fourth in points, fifth in points, not doing bad, but like in the hunt. But then when the chase would come on, they would just win and win and win and win, you know? So maybe there's a surprise in the chase. And one, like the biggest surprise we've ever had in the chase, like I always remember Tony Stewart. Tony Stewart made the chase by the skin of his teeth, and he even said in an interview before the chase even started, like, we shouldn't even be here. This spot should be given to somebody else that deserves it more, but we'll take it. And then he went on and won in the greatest championship battle in NASCAR history, tying with Carl Edwards and beating Carl Edwards on a tiebreaker to win the championship that year. So there's really anything that could happen here. So I wouldn't count out. I would count out a couple people for the championship, I guess, but I wouldn't count out really very. There's probably gonna be more people competing for this championship than we think, because everybody's been trying to catch up to Toyota, and I don't know if they're necessarily catching up yet, but there's still more time for these manufacturers to catch up. Talking about Ford, talking about Chevrolet, especially Hendrick, because I think Spire is phenomenal right now. I think they're at the top of their game, and Hendrick aren't quite at the top of their game yet. So I think there's a lot to be had, but I think that regular season championship battle is between Blaney, Reddick, and Hamlin. I think those are the only three that could really get it. I don't think Blaney's going to make it up. I think it's going to be one of those two, but I could be wrong, because you made a very good point there, Corey. All the tracks that we're going to over the next couple of weeks are Blaney tracks. They're short tracks, they're super speedways, they're flat tracks. Those are the tracks that I think Blaney finds the most success at. It either needs to be over 2 miles or below 1 mile. And anything in between is where Blaney isn't bad, but it's not his stronger tracks, I would say. So we'll have to see what happens over these next couple of weeks and once we get to the chase. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about Ryan Blaney having such a dominating win at Echo Park Speedway? And do you think it's realistic that Ryan Blaney could potentially still win the regular season championship away from Tyler Reddick and Denny Hamlin? All right, now that we're done with all that, we only really have one real news story to talk about. And it came out actually earlier today, an update when it comes to super speedway racing. And I have some stuff written in front of me that I'm actually going to, if you see me looking at my phone here, I'm making sure I get this stuff right. The super speedway spoiler was 7 inches, and now it's been reduced to 4 inches. We're talking about the new super speedway package at Daytona and Talladega here. The horsepower has been reduced from 510 to 520 to 465. So that could be quite interesting to see what could happen. Just to look at a couple other things that are in here. I think Cory kind of put out the most important things. I think those are the most important things out of this. But a couple other things from the package would be safety equipment remains the same as the current super speedway package. The engine tapered spacer reduced to 27 32nd inches or whatever you want to call it. New spoiler braces. So a couple other changes when it comes to the super speedway package and these cars as well. And it's something I'm really looking forward to. The main reason I'm looking forward to this is because this is something that Denny said like 6 months ago or however long he said it when we had our last super speedway race. Not our last super speedway race. That was closer than 6 months ago. But you know what I'm saying. I heard Denny talk about it not all that long ago about if we lower the horsepower, that could potentially actually help the racing, which I think from most perspectives, people would think that less horsepower is going to make the racing better and make them race more. I think most people would be like, huh, that doesn't sound right. But with super speedway racing, it's kind of like a different beast. You want everybody to stick together and being able to jump out and make moves. And with them making the spoiler smaller also creates less downforce, less drag on the car. So I'm very excited. One thing to also keep in mind, and I thought about this a little earlier, is like some of the best racing we see at Daytona, and I think Cory and Tyler know what I'm talking about, but some of you may laugh at me, is the MX-5 Cup when the Mazda Miatas are ripping around Daytona. They hit the road course and then they hit the big oval and stuff like that. That racing is exciting. It always comes down to the very last lap, and there's big runs on the front straightaway. It's epic. It's epic. If you've never watched the MX-5 Cup at Daytona, it is a show in itself. It's always a great show. But those cars don't even have 200 horsepower. They have 181 horsepower. They don't have as much horsepower, and they're able to produce that. So I'm hoping what we see with the Cup Series is maybe somewhat similar to what we see with the MX-5 Cup. I know that's a very weird comparison to make, but maybe we could see something different. I don't know how this will affect the fuel saving. I don't know if this will affect the fuel saving all that much. That might still be a problem. We'll have to see what happens with that. That might still be a problem, but this will help with drafting, with potential slingshots, because the slingshot's been dead. The slingshot's been dead for a number of years now in the Cup Series, and the slingshot could be brought back. Slingshot, slingshot engage. We don't have that right now, so I would love to see that come back in some way, shape, or form. I want to get Cory's thoughts on this first, as Cory's kind of the one that brought this to our attention. These changes to the super speedway package. Cory, I don't know how much knowledge you have about these cars and what these changes could potentially do to the way they handle per se, but what are your hopes, I would say, and what are your expectations of these changes to the super speedway package?
I mean, I think anytime there's a change, it's exciting, right? And I think honestly, the person that knows the most about this or would know the most about this is Denny Hamlin. And they did exactly what Denny Hamlin said they should do, and which was lower the spoiler, lower some other aerodynamic stuff, and you could even reduce the horsepower, and it should result in good racing. Do we know if that's going to work 100% or not? No. Is it hope? I mean, but it's hard to take a step back from the current Daytona and Talladega racing that there is. When you either fuel save and it's just a show for TV and there's no racing involved, or you go full speed and you can't pass. And if you decide to pass and no one helps you, you lose all your positions. So you lose. It's 100% risk for barely any reward, And so anything is an improvement, and it's a shout out to NASCAR for actually listening to Denny Hamlin, and actually they used him as a spokesperson to like explain the differences and why it's gonna be better, and that's awesome because you know if anybody's gonna know more about the car and how to get the most out of it, it's gonna be someone that drives the car every week and owns a team and knows a little bit about how, or knows more than the average driver about how it should work, right? So I'm excited. This whole change is exciting. I mean, if like you heard what I said in the chat, I was like, wow, it's kind of crazy that there's some legal cars on like the roads in America that have more horsepower than NASCAR cars. If you focus solely on the horsepower number, you don't know enough, because they were running 400 horsepower way back in the day. So like, it's not a big deal, but I'm excited that we hopefully get different racing.
Yeah, I'm expecting some good racing, and that stage one's going to be crazy because at the moment there is no practice on the schedule for the weekend. So that's something that's probably a different conversation when we get closer to the race. Hopefully they add in practice with this new super speedway package, because that first stage could be quite troublesome with this new package potentially. We'll have to see when we get closer to the race at Daytona, which is a little bit over a month away at this point. At this point, a month and a half away before we get started with the chase. So we'll have to see what happens with that. I think they should add in practice, but I think it's a good move that they're at least trying something and they're listening to Denny. And Denny Hamlin not just one of the best Cup Series drivers in history. I think there's an argument to be made, other than maybe Dale Earnhardt and Dale Earnhardt Jr., that he's the greatest driver to ever race on super speedways. I would probably put Earnhardt and Jr. ahead of him, but other than Earnhardt and Jr., Hamlin's probably the third best ever on super speedways. He's just always been amazing on the super speedways, and he's struggled the last couple of years, as a lot of people have. It's been a completely different type of racing, and it's more luck based and track position based. It's not really about, can you make passes, can you see the runs. That's something that Denny and Junior and some of these guys always talk about. Like, the best super speedway racers can see the runs before they even happen. At this point, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter with this current version of super speedway racing. So I'm hoping that this horsepower change is able to change some of those things. Probably won't change the fuel saving, but I'm hoping it helps all our other problems. Tyler, how do you feel about this horsepower change that we're seeing at Daytona here in a couple of weeks?
My opinion, it's going to be a good thing. I mean, horsepower doesn't exactly mean good racing, right? I mean, it does in NHRA, it does in drag racing, it does in things like that. But in pack racing and any type of racing that NASCAR does, unless it's short track, it really doesn't make a difference. What we want is actually lower horsepower for more car control, because those guys need to have more car control. Because right
That's
now, what
valid. Didn't think
happens is
about
in
that.
the whole reason why we don't get passing and things like that is because the cars are uneasy. They cannot get the right air, they cannot get the right passing to not wreck themselves. So I feel like less horsepower should help a lot of those problems. I mean, it's not guaranteed by any means, but it should absolutely help and give them a little bit more room to get more aggressive with their cars and use them a little bit more under control, instead of it being like a V8 Mustang that a 16-year-old never driven before. It's always best to give them a V6, right? Same thing. Same exact shit when we're talking about a super speedway, if you ask me.
Yeah, I'm just very excited to see what comes of this, because I just think it's a good move to at least try. See if it works. If it doesn't work, oh well, because we haven't seen a good race on a super speedway in a while. I'd say this year, I forget what changes they made previously, but the changes that they made previously, I'd say the super speedway racing has definitely taken a step up this year to what we've seen with the next gen era of the Cup Series, but it's still not even close to really good racing. It's just not. So them shrinking the spoiler and them changing the horsepower, I think, are two huge things for pretty much the same thing, same reason, affecting the car control, affecting the potential runs, especially with the shrinkage of the spoiler. That's going to affect how big of a hole in the air these cars make. So hopefully that's able to help when it comes to downforce and all that stuff. So we'll have to see how these changes work out for the super speedway package. But I think we're all at least fond of them, at least trying. If it doesn't work out, I don't think anybody's going to get too upset about it if it's a bad race, because at least NASCAR tried. And I think that's one thing that's commendable when it comes to this move. The only other thing that would make it more commendable if they added practice. They should add practice. I don't know why they're not adding practice. But like I said, that's a different discussion. Maybe they've seen all the discourse online. Maybe they'll decide to add practice. There's still time to add practice. So we'll have to see about that. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about this updated super speedway package? Okay, well, now that we're done with pretty much our news story of the week, let's begin to preview North Wilkesboro this upcoming weekend, starting with Larry's Laps, where I, Larry, take a couple laps at Wilkesboro. I'll be driving the truck this time, and I'll give you my thoughts on this repaved version of Wilkesboro as we head into the first points race there in 30 years.
All right, welcome to Larry's Laps. I decided to do the next gen car instead because of the shifting. I expect to see some shifting in this race throughout a good amount of the event. I wouldn't be surprised if some drivers decide not to shift to potentially save tires throughout the race. And I also expect a lot of searching around the racetrack because you can race the bottom, you can race the top to the middle lane. You can kind of do something like this where you enter high and you exit the corner low. I expect a lot of searching around through this race on this pretty much freshly paved surface. Last year was the first year on the repave, so we'll see what we end up getting this weekend in Wilkesboro.
Right now that we've taken a couple laps at Wilkesboro, let's go through the weekend schedule and a couple of weekend facts and some notable entries for this weekend at Wilkesboro, as we have the Cup Series and the Craftsman Truck Series in Wilkes County this weekend. All right, let's first start with the weekend schedule for North Wilkesboro Speedway and our three primary National Series. No O'Reilly Auto Parts Series this weekend, not even any ARCA Series races, whether that's East, West, or the main Menard Series, just trucks and Cup Series in Wilkes County. On Friday at 2 p.m., we have Craftsman Truck Series practice on Fox Sports 2, immediately followed by qualifying. And then on Saturday at 12:30 p.m., we have the Faith Fest 250, the Craftsman Truck Series race on Fox Sports 1. And then at 5 p.m., we have Cup Series practice on True TV, immediately followed by qualifying. And then we look ahead to Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, another Sunday night race. We'll have to see how this one goes. We have the Window World 450 on TNT, also the semifinal race for the in-season challenge. Let's look at the weekend and track facts. It is the Window World 450. The stages end at lap 80 for stage 1, 265 for stage 2, and it's a 450 lap event. The track, of course, is located in North Wilkesboro, North Carolina. It is a 0.62 mile short track. The first Cup Series race was back in October 16th, 1949, won by Bob Flock. No active win leader. We've only had 2 races there, both being all-star races. And then, of course, last year's winner in the all-star race was Christopher Bell. The notable entries in the trucks and the Cup Series, no O'Reilly Series this week. In the trucks, we have Cory in the number 5 for Tricon Garage. We have Chase Elliott in the number 7 for Spire, Shane Van Gisbergen in the 71 for Spire, and then the 77 for Spire being Carson Hocevar. And then we look at the number 25 for Collie Graham. We have Ryan Newman making his return to NASCAR this weekend. And then we have Christopher Bell in the number 62 for Stuart Friesen. Then the Cup Series, the only open car we have this week is the number 66 of Chad Fincham. And then the weekend weather report. Friday looks like it's probably going to be pretty good. And this is also being recorded late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning. Saturday night, it looks like we're going to potentially get some thunderstorms around 50% at the moment. And then Sunday night, same thing, around 50% at the moment for PM showers, though, and not thunderstorms. But chances of rain both Saturday and Sunday night at the racetrack. All right, now that we're done with all that, let's begin to get into the real preview of Wilkesboro, the rest of our preview, I should say, of Wilkesboro. And I want to ask the boys their thoughts on North Wilkesboro getting a points race again. They haven't had a points race in like 30 years. The track got repaved, 2 years ago now? After that, they had that first all-star race there, and then they had the second one there, and it was paved. So this would be the second year on this current paved surface. I wish they got a points race on the old surface, but honestly, with the way this car is at short tracks, it probably wouldn't have mattered all that much. Not sure. But I'm very interested to see what we see this weekend when it comes to short track racing with the Cup Series, because we haven't had good racing at short tracks in the Cup Series. I'm curious to see how it all turns out this weekend. I'm hoping that it turns out great, but honestly, I don't have the highest of hopes. Like I said, I'm excited to see what we get, but my hopes aren't high. They just aren't. Cory, what are your thoughts on Wilkesboro? I know we haven't really raced there a bunch. A very short track with a lot of history, recently repaved. What are your thoughts on Wilkesboro heading into this weekend?
I think if you would have asked me last week, I would say I'm not super excited. I'm happy for the track. I am happy that they get their first points race in 30 or so years. Um, but and just based off our experience, when there's the max 20 cars on the track, it it was good, maybe just about average. I don't know, a little bit above average because of the hype, and it was an all-star race. But like now with it being a points race and it being a full field, there's going to be lap cars pretty quickly, which is going
Yes.
to make it more entertaining, right? So I'm excited. The short track is what this car is good at right now, and just hopefully it works out well. I'm excited because one, it's a night race, one, the history of the track, and that now having a full field on the track, it should make it more entertaining than the all-star races, which were entertaining in themselves. But yeah, I think I'm excited. I think, like you said, I think the best way is to say is excited, and we should all be. The history of it, and having a full field on that track at a night during a night race will be fun.
Probably one of the things that makes me the most excited about this weekend, though, would just be Dale Jr. Because Dale Jr. loves this racetrack. He's talked so much about bringing this racetrack back, and he's talked about it even before they did the first All Star race. He's like, man, they shouldn't even do an All Star race. They should just do a points race, man. That was like immediately that came out of his mouth. He was immediately complaining that it wasn't a points race. So I'm excited for. Honestly, I'm pretty excited for Junior, and I loved the point you made there, Cory, because that's something I didn't even really think about. Is that we're going to have a full field, not the 43 cars like we used to have, but like 38 cars or whatever on the racetrack. And that could provide something that could really help with the racing, that could help with the entertainment. People are going to be going laps down real quick. We're taking bets now over under 7.5 laps. If Cody Ware goes a lap down, we're taking those bets currently now. Don't actually send them, please. Don't actually send the bets. We'll get in trouble. Don't do it. Don't do it. But I'm looking forward to Wilkesboro just to see what we get. Tyler, there's been a lot of Wilkesboro talk over the last couple of years, especially by one of our favorite people, Dale Earnhardt Jr., who's he should be the president of this racetrack. He should be the owner of this racetrack because he's the one that kind of brought it back too. Because they went to go clean up Wilkesboro. He had some people show up and they went to go clean it up just so it can get scanned by iRacing. And when they were looking at the racetrack after it got cleaned up, they were like, "Wait, this track is savable." They didn't think it was savable until they cleaned it up, and they're like, "You know what? We could actually save this thing," and they did. They did save this legendary racetrack and brought it back from the brought it back from the dead. I'm still in disbelief that they were able to pull that off. But this is the second year on this paved surface. This is where the bad stuff comes in, Tyler. This is the second year on the paved surface, and this car is really bad on short tracks, to say the least. Tyler, how do you feel about going into this Wilkesboro weekend?
Trying to hold out some hope, right? I mean, like you said, Dale Jr. loves this track, so it makes me want to love this track. So it's hard because, like you said, that are absolutely sucker. So it's one of them we're gonna get, I guess you can say, but same, it's awesome to know that NASCAR cares enough to go back to a track like this and give the people what they want, what they're asking for.
Yeah, it's good they're at least making the effort in, and I think it's going to do. I think the Truck Series race could either be the best Truck Series race of the season or the worst Truck Series race of the season. I'm not sure which yet. It's gonna be one of those two, because that could be a very intense, crazy race. I'm probably looking forward to that one almost more than the Cup Series race, because I'm expecting at least some really good racing in the Truck Series race. When the Cup Series race, I have zero expectations. It could be one of the best races of the season, possibly, but it very easily could be the worst race in the Cup Series season. We'll just have to see when we get there here in a couple of days. But let us know your thoughts in the
I will
comments.
say,
What's up?
I will say that it's a shame that they didn't bring the O'Reilly cars to this track because those cars probably would have been great.
Agreed. I think the O'Reilly cars should be there, but they got to pick their places where they want to go and where they don't want to go. I think it would have made a lot of sense for the O'Reilly cars to show up for this race, especially being Wilkesboro, it being close to race shops and stuff like that. And it's also the first points race there. I think it would make a lot of sense for them to bring the O'Reilly cars there, but the O'Reilly cars haven't been there the last 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. It's just been Cup and trucks. The O'Reilly cars haven't seen this track at all. I don't think, unless I'm wrong. I think I'm right about that though. That the O'Reilly cars just haven't been there at all. Which I agree. I think they'd put on a better show than the Cup Series. I don't know about the trucks. I would be more confident probably in the trucks, just because we've seen what the O'Reilly Series likes to do at Martinsville. They like to turn Martinsville into a freaking crash 'em up derby, anytime the O'Reilly Series goes there. So I don't know. I do wish they were there though. So I agree with that. But let us know your thoughts. Are you looking forward to Wilkesboro this weekend? I think all of us are looking forward to it, but at the same time, we're looking forward to it mainly because we just want to see what happens. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. It's kind of very loose expectations for the Cup Series race this weekend. But let us know your thoughts about all that in the comments down below. Right now that we're done with all of that, we're done with our preview of Wilkesboro. We're done talking about Echo Park and Lime Rock, and we talked about pretty much everything. One thing we do got to talk about really briefly, though, before we get into our weekly picks, before I forget, is the tournament update. We got to go through our tournament update here. In-season challenge. We're down to our final 4 drivers in the in-season challenge. Our winner of the first bracket, because all these drivers essentially won their parts of the bracket. The winner of his bracket ended up being Todd Gilliland. Todd Gilliland ended up taking down Alex Bowman this past week. So Todd Gilliland is the Cinderella story of this year's in-season challenge. He's the Ty Dillon of this year's in-season challenge, and he'll be facing off against NASCAR's most popular driver in Chase Elliott this upcoming weekend in Wilkesboro to go to the championship race of the in-season challenge. And then on the opposite side of the bracket, we have Christopher Bell winning his part of the bracket, and he'll be facing against Ryan fucking Blaney, the winner of this past weekend's race at Echo Park Speedway. So those are your final 4. Gilliland versus Elliott will face the winner of Bell versus Blaney in the in-season challenge championship week and a half from now in the Brickyard 400. Of course, in last year's edition of the in-season challenge, it was the battle of the ties. You had Ty Dillon versus Ty Gibbs. Both of them had not had a career win up to that point. Battling it out at the Brickyard ended up being Ty Gibbs, who ended up being last year's in-season challenge. And neither of those drivers are in this final 4. I want to get the boys' thoughts on this because I'm personally really hyped to see at least one Cinderella guy in there and Todd Gilliland. And then I think the other 3 are very much expected. The three of the best drivers in our sport, plus Todd Gilliland. Tyler, how do we feel about this final 4 that we have here? And is there anybody you're feeling in particular out of these final 4 drivers to win the whole thing? We got Wilkesboro this week, and we got the Brickyard 400 next week.
I don't know. I'm kind of excited for Toddy Pickles to be in there. That's been
I like that
excited
name.
for me to see that.
That's a good nickname, Toddy Pickles, because the Grillo Pickles.
Yeah, because the Grillo Pickles.
I like that. I'm about to start calling him that. Toddy Pickles. It's like Tommy Pickles, but Toddy Pickles.
Yeah.
I'm about to start calling him. I like that. That's his new nickname, Toddy Pickles. Did you just come up with that right now, or did you see that somewhere?
Yeah. No, I just came up with that just now.
Damn, that's his nickname. You heard it here first, people. Toddy Pickles. I like that. That's a great nickname. That's a fun one. That's a deep cut too. If you watch the Rugrats, you know what I'm talking about. Now we need is Chuck Finster. Where the fuck Chuck Finster at? Where's that guy at? We need that. We need some Chuck Finster out here. But yeah, I don't know. I would love to see Todd Gilliland. I know a lot of people are probably gonna hate this, but I want to see Todd Gilliland beat Chase Elliott this week because I want to see Todd Gilliland in that championship race. I want that underdog story, and that would help Todd Gilliland out. That would help out Front Row with sponsorship. I think that's I think it's a big deal. I think it's a big deal to maybe do something like that. And I think that's part of the reason why we see Ty Dillon racing again for Colleague this year from what he did in that in-season challenge last year. I think that probably took at least a small part into it. I know RCR and everything, but they don't even have the Alliance anymore. So I think that definitely played a part in that, on him staying another year. So I'm looking forward to the in-season challenge. If I had to pick who I think is going to win this in-season challenge, Ryan fucking Blaney, RFB. That's who I think is going to take it personally. But Cory, what do you think about this final four that we have in front of us? And out of these four final drivers, who is your pick to win the in-season challenge?
I think we're all secretly hoping for the Cinderella story and having Todd Gilliland win it. That'd be awesome.
Oh, for sure.
My pick before the season challenge started was Blaney v. Elliott. Blaney wins it, and both of them there, so that's still a possibility. But just to have a safe bet, my pick this week's going to be Christopher Bell because I think he's going to win this week. So, I'm going to bust my own bracket.
Man's going to bust his own bracket. That's crazy. That's crazy work by you, Cory. That's crazy. Man, like, you're like your... Yeah, do you like bust your own gambles too? Like when you make sports bets, do you bust those too? Like, geez. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think the in-season challenge is a good thing. I wish it got built up a little bit more this year. I don't think it's been talked about quite as much as I would like it to be. I mean, they've talked about it during the races here and there and stuff like that, but just in the weekly discourse, I wish it was talked about, I guess, a little bit more. But nonetheless, I think it's a great thing that's been brought in with the in-season challenge. I don't like the name in-season challenge. I always call it like the in-season tournament or something like that. Because it's a forgetful name, the in-season challenge. I think that's one thing I'd probably change about it is change it to something else, make it have more of a catchy name, or in-season challenge. Just, I don't know. It just doesn't sound right. I don't know. I guess that's just me. I don't know, but not a big fan of that. But I'm looking forward to it. See what we're able to get with this in-season challenge. Maybe we're able to get that Cinderella story. I think that would be what we all want, to see Todd Gilliland win it, because that would be pretty cool. And it's not like you're winning a race per se, so it wouldn't really affect Elliott, Blaney, and Bell that much, but it would help. It would help Gilliland a lot in his career, and it would help Front Row, I think, a lot as well. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about the final four in the in-season challenge? You have Blaney versus Bell, and you have Gilliland versus Elliott. Who wins the races this week? Are you picking Gilliland over Elliott? Are you picking Elliott over Gilliland? And same on the other side, Bell over Blaney or Blaney over Bell? Let us know your thoughts in the comments about all of that. All right, now on to our last part of the show before we have last word, and that, of course, is our weekly picks. So let's go through our weekly picks, updated standings post Echo Park Speedway. Cory ended up taking Ryan fucking Blaney this past week, RFB, and he got 3 points for the weekly win plus 3 points for the race win with RFB. So that will give him 6 points for the week and move Cory up to 61 points. So he's trying to get back into this championship battle. Then we look over at Tyler, who ended up getting last place points with only the single point. Briscoe finishing near the back in this race, so only the 1 point Tyler only gets the 1 point from Chase Briscoe, so he goes from 65 to 66 points. I picked Brad Keselowski, who didn't get that good of a finish either, but he did do better than Briscoe. So he got me 2 points, moving me from 73 to 75 points currently on the season. So I'm in the lead with 75, so I pick last. Tyler has 66 points, so he'll pick second. And then Cory will pick first with 61. Cory already kind of let everybody know who he's picking, but we're going to send it to him anyway. And we're going to act like he didn't say who he was picking. Cory, I have no idea who you're going to take. Who are you going to pick for North Wilkesboro? I have no clue.
I'm picking the somewhat injured man, Christopher Bell.
You heard it here. Cory has decided to pick the driver of the number 20, Christopher Bell, to win this weekend for Joe Gibbs Racing. That would be a good moment for Bell. Bell hasn't won yet this season, has he? I don't think he's won a race yet this season, Cory, has he? I don't think he has, and yeah, that's what I thought.
He has not. Neither has Larson. I cry. I'm kidding.
That's fine though. That's fine. Larson will get his wins. We know he will. We know he'll win eventually. But yeah, so that will be Cory's pick. He will pick C Bell to win this upcoming weekend. And now I send it to Tyler. Tyler, who is your pick to win at North Wilkesboro this upcoming weekend?
Speaking of the big dick tripper, I'm gonna take the best at short tracks, Mr. Larson.
Ooh, hung money is what Tyler said. He picks the driver of the number 5 for Hendrick Motorsports, Kyle Larson, to win this upcoming race at North Wilkesboro. And I'm gonna pick him go back to back. I'm gonna pick RFB, Ryan fucking Blaney. Ryan Blaney, the driver of the number 12, to win the race, potentially on his new motorcycle. They should let him race the motorcycle. Just let him race. That would be cool. You know, he might win. Just put that backwards hat on. Everybody like, oh, he's way too cool. We can't race that guy. He's way too cool. You know, that'd be awesome. But yeah, that's my pick. Ryan Blaney, the driver of the number 12. And then just to update our Hail Mary bonuses, we all took our Hail Mary bonuses this last week, and none of us won any points from the Hail Mary bonus. Cory was the closest. He got 11th place with Ross Chastain, so he came one spot short of getting that 1 point. With Ross the Boss Chastain, but all of us have used our Hail Mary bonus so far for this series of 8, so none of us have Hail Mary bonuses, so it's just regular picks for us. So just to go over our picks one more time, Cory has decided to pick the driver of the number 20 for Joe Gibbs Racing, C. Bell, Christopher Bell, to win this race at Wilkesboro. Tyler has decided to pick the driver of the number 5 for Hendrick Motorsports, Young Money, Kyle Larson, to win this upcoming weekend. And I have decided to pick the driver of the number 12 for Team Penske, that being Ryan Blaney, RFB, to go back-to-back this weekend. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. Who is your pick to win in Wilkes County in the first points race at North Wilkesboro Speedway in 30 years? All right, after all that will actually do it for this week's edition of Hit the Pacecar here on YouTube. Once again, we would appreciate a like, comment, follow, subscribe, share, do whatever you need to do. But before we actually head out, I got to send it to the boys for a last word. Tyler, is there anything you have to say to the people before we head on our way for Wilkesboro?
If you want to check in on Carson's t-shirt count, 20 Chase Elliott shirts was the most collected. So if you ask me, best driver or favorite driver award is gonna go to Carson soon.
This man keeps on making points. He keeps on making valid points, and it's pissing me off. No, it's not. Just wanted to say that. But Cory, any last words you got for the people before we head out?
Kyle Busch quote: after that great Echo Park race on Sunday, minus the rain delay, if you don't like that type of racing, don't even watch.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. We love it. We love it. We love it. That's one of my favorite quotes from him ever. He's using a little, doing a little crying emoji. It's like, if you don't like that racing, don't even watch. You know, that's one of his best. Everything's great will probably always be his best, though. Everything's great. That could be used for anything, Cory. Everything's great one could be used for anything. That's like the best quote. Everything's great.
Me and dead last in points. Everything's great.
Yeah, we need Zillich. We need to get Zillich to say that. Everything's great. All right, but that'll do it for this week's edition of Hit the Pacecar. Once again, subscribe, do whatever you need to do. We would greatly appreciate it over here on the Pacecar Boys YouTube channel. Well, just make sure here today that you're a badass here today and get rowdy.